All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Whiskey Jedi podcast number 4. I am the Whiskey Jedi, and I go by Jake Berlin, or Qui-Gon Jake, or the Whiskey Jedi. As I mentioned, this is episode 4 of this podcast, and I am super excited you guys are joining me today. I have a really cool show to talk about today, and one specific topic. And if you clicked on the thumbnail on YouTube, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you saw the title on podcast form, you know even more so what I'm talking about. That is Solo, a Star Wars story. We're going to be talking about Solo today, and there's a couple reasons why. One, it is, it was on Monday, Make Solo 2 Happen Day. And I will go into detail about that here in just a little bit. But it was Make Solo 2 Happen Day, and that was dubbed by a fellow podcast that I've been following for quite a while now. It is the second annual version of that. It's also just because I want to talk the movie. It's been 2 years since this movie came out. I think it's very enjoyable. I think it's very underrated, and I have some reasons why that is the case. Today, if you saw the title, there are some specific reasons why I believe that to be the case. We're going to be doing our 5 best and 1 worst of Solo, a Star Wars story, which I'm very excited to do. And, you know, I didn't want to be completely biased towards just, one or 5 reasons why this movie is absolutely incredible. I wanted to throw a reason into there as to why maybe it is considered to be a downer of a movie, or a letdown of a better word, maybe even overrated to some. But I felt like because it is Make Solo 2 Happen Day, and because I personally really enjoy this movie, I think it's the perfect time to celebrate the movie and discuss it. And since I haven't done it in a while on any of the podcasts I'm a part of, I'm looking forward to discussing that with you guys today. And so, again, thank you guys for joining me. Before we get started, if you guys are watching on YouTube, perfect. What you guys can also do is listen to me on podcast form. So you guys can see it right there in the corner. I'm also on Apple and Spotify, and also a number of other podcast forms like Anchor and Google, Breaker, Stitcher, all that good stuff. If you guys are listening to a podcast on any other platform that wasn't mentioned, more than likely I am on there. It's thanks to a great distribution process of one of the podcasts that I use as my home base, and so I'm very thankful for that. You guys can also find me on Twitter at Qui-Gon Jake right there below me. I'm very active on Twitter with not just Star Wars, but a number of movie topics, and kind of fandoms, and podcast platform or podcasts as well. And so if you guys want to check those out, I really appreciate it. Liking and commenting is awesome, but subscribing always helps. And of course, for the podcast platforms, rating is the big key there. Rating allows the podcast to be seen more. So if you do that, I can't thank you guys enough. I really appreciate it. So before we get into some Star Wars, guys, of course, the other side of this podcast is talking about whiskey and different flavors and different kinds of whiskey. I've done 3 shows so far, and they've all been great. I've really enjoyed the way it's been going, the learning process that I've kind of gone through, and the developments I've made through those weeks, and that'll continue, no doubt. That'll definitely continue. But being that I am talking about Solo today, it was funny. Before I even started recording this podcast, I had this goal in mind because number 4 has been my favorite number for a very long time. If you guys have been listening, you know that I was a big baseball player, and 4 is my number. And so I was like, I got to go all out for the 4th show, right? 4th show, 4th, a favorite whiskey, anything like that. That changed last minute because I decided to talk about Solo today. I decided, not to choose my favorite whiskey because my favorite whiskey doesn't go with Solo as much as it would something like an Empire Strikes Back, which I think is the perfect combination of those two. So for today, you guys can see it right there on the left-hand side of the screen. For your audio listeners, I'm going to be talking about PB&W peanut butter flavored whiskey. Now, I have tried this before, and if you guys, when I show you the bottle, you can see that it's actually been drank quite a bit. So very cool bottle here. Carnival flavored. You see the peanuts right there up top. PB&W peanut butter flavored whiskey. Now, peanut butter flavored whiskey is very popular. There's a number of different brands. The most popular brand being Screwball. But I was given this, on my birthday by my two of my greatest friends. They gifted this to me. She's actually an alcohol distributor, and this is, I believe it's one of her brands, and she was able to snag one for me. and I enjoy the hell out of it. I'll tell you guys right now, I enjoy the hell out of it. I'm very excited to talk about it in depth and in detail a little bit more as we try it. Um, but if you guys have not heard of it, hopefully you guys are checking this out, listening or watching, and this interests you enough to grab a bottle. As I mentioned every show, if you guys grab a bottle after listening to one of my shows, I'd love for you guys to hit me up on Twitter, send me a picture, or just share a comment. That would be awesome. That's always welcome. But let me go ahead and pour a glass here. All right, there we go. Not going to do too big of a one today because I want to save it as I'm getting low on this one. Definitely more so than any of the ones back there. I was actually just gifted another one by two of my better friends as well this past weekend, which I'm very excited to be. It'll be a first timer for me. But we were talking about PB&W today, and before I get into any more detail about that, I will take a swig, and then we will get into Solo: A Star Wars Story. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, Solo: A Star Wars Story. Make Solo 2 happen day. Now, this movement is actually really, really cool. As I mentioned, um, the podcast that I've been following, the Resistance broadcast, they are part of Star Wars Newsnet.net, and or dot com, excuse me. And John, James, and Lacey over there do a great job breaking down Star Wars twice a week, and I love listening to their show. I would love to collaborate with them one day and talk to them personally about Star Wars. I have talked with them over Twitter a number of times. But 2 years ago, or excuse me, last year, they started the movement hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen Day, and it was on Twitter. They announced it on their show. They made T-shirts, which I have a shirt. I just for some reason didn't put it on today, which is the oddest thing. But I do have one, and it instantly blew up. It caught on like wildfire. People, they obviously showed their true love for this movie. Twitter, it was trending worldwide for a number of hours. It was all over the planet for people who adore this movie and want to see something happen as far as a sequel, whether it's a film or television. Um, and so a year passed, and the hashtag grew and grew, and people were tweeting about it daily, and it became a movement. And this just happened again on Monday, and it got all the way up to number 2 on Twitter trending worldwide. It had something like near 20,000 tweets about it in a certain amount of hours. They did a podcast on Monday about it, and people love this movie, and they showed their love for it. And I am one of those people. I think that Solo is such a bright spot in Star Wars, especially recently with the fandom that has kind of come to light over the last number of years. And a lot of people see Solo as kind of the butt of it because it gets a lot of flack online, and it had a lot of issues behind the scenes, the most issues of any of the movies. But taking the movie for what it is, I really, really enjoy this film. And I'm going to give you guys a number of reasons why. And so the way this is going to work is I have five of the best reasons as to why Solo is great, and I have one of the worst reasons as to why Solo is considered a flop or a fail or an overrated movie or any of that nature. And to kind of break this up, I'm going to do my 5, 4, and 3 of the best reasons, then my worst, and then my 2 and my 1. We'll finish on a high note there. I'm not going to take too much time on each topic, but these are the reasons why I believe that Solo, 5 of the best reasons and 1 of the worst reasons for Solo: A Star Wars Story. So, starting with number 5, very simple, very easy, very straightforward for this film, and that is the cast. The cast is remarkable. Now, when we talk about Star Wars cast, there's every single movie is just bonkers good. Like they are. Like you think of the original movies, obviously Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher, Peter Mayhew, right? Anthony Daniels, Warwick Davis. Just the cast is incredible, right? I mean, you have James Earl Jones voicing. It's a crazy thing about it. You think about the prequels. You have Ewan McGregor, you have Hayden Christensen, Natalie Portman. You have all these characters coming in that are popping in here and there. Different characters. Samuel Jackson. I mean, the list goes on and on because it's such a vast, era of Star Wars. Then you think about the new era of Star Wars, like the sequel era. For the sequel trilogy, you have Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac and Carrie Fisher came back and Harrison Ford came back, and you have all of these actors and actors. Adam Driver, Domhnall Gleeson. The cast is huge. You go to to Rogue One, Felicity Jones and Diego Luna and Donnie Yen, and it's crazy to think about Ben Mendelsohn. It's just the cast that they get for movies is awesome. Now, the smallest cast by far in any of these movies is Solo. That is without a doubt a fact. But each person shines through so much in their role, and that begins with Alden Ehrenreich. Now, I know that a lot of you may be listening thinking, he wasn't Han Solo. That's not my Han Solo. I get your argument there. I understand your argument, but here's my argument. We first met Han Solo when he was in his early 30s. Okay, we met him at a time where the galaxy was very dark, right? There was no really light shining through. He was hardcore into smuggling. He owed a lot of debt to a lot of people. And so it's a different type of Han Solo. That is our Han Solo. I will never argue that. That is 100% our Han Solo. Harrison Ford is our Han Solo. I will never argue that. But for Solo, a Star Wars story, it is a different Han Solo. That is a different character. He is younger. He is more eager. He is, like they had mentioned in the movie, Woody Harrelson's character said it. He is hungrier. He is arrogant. He has this different vibe about him, right? He's a little bit more optimistic about things, right? He looks at things very differently. And Alden Ehrenreich played that perfectly. I just watched it again today. I legitimately watched it again today, prepare for this, make sure I knew everything ins and out. He is so good in this movie. I don't understand where people give him flack. I don't get it. I will never understand it. It's something that I think makes this movie great. He played this role as best as he could, and he delivered. And I think he makes the movie better, which is exactly what you're looking for an actor. Now you go down the line here. The next person we can obviously talk about is Donald Glover as Lando. Brilliant, right? He's got the swag. He's got the suave. He has this charisma. Right? Everybody likes him. He's attractive. It works for the character. He played Lando to the T. He even voiced him as perfectly as he could to mimic Billy D. Williams, which worked great. And the chemistry between those two was even better than people believe it to be. And so I can't give enough credit to those two for doing those characters justice, because those characters, out of any in this movie, they had to succeed. They had to be successful for this movie to be successful, and they were. That's why this movie works. Now you round out the cast out. Obviously, you have Emilia Clarke as Kira, a character that we want to see more of, and we will get to her a little bit later as well in a different reason. I want to see more of her. I want to see more of her in some other light. She was great. Emilia Clarke is so underrated in my opinion. I don't think she gets enough credit for her work on Game of Thrones and other projects she has done. She hasn't always picked the best roles or been a part of the best roles, and I think this is one of the bright spots, and it's led to a lot of people believing that something down the line can be focused on her, or she can at least be a part of. And so next in line, obviously, we have Woody Harrelson, right, as Beckett. A great character. Woody Harrelson's great in everything. Honestly, I don't know there's a role of Woody Harrelson that I don't like. He's so good in everything he does, and playing the father figure, this bounty hunter, not bounty hunter, kind of like this criminal who's doing jobs for some bad people. He's got this certain charisma to him that you really like. He's an outlaw, but he's also a bad guy. He's got a good guy vibe to him, and he countered Alden Ehrenreich's Han Solo very, very well. Obviously, Chewbacca shine in the movie. We'll get to him later as well. And the rest of the cast is remarkable, right? You have Paul Bettany as Dryden Voss, which very, very underused. Definitely a downer in the film because he just wasn't used as much as he wanted him to. You have Val, played by Tanya Newton, who was just brilliant. You have Jon Favreau voicing Rio, which is a great addition. And so the cast is really remarkable. Obviously, we didn't mention, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge, before she was really Phoebe Waller-Bridge, voicing L3, a lot of people love her, and she's definitely one of their favorite droids. And so kudos to her as well. A smaller cast as far as the main cast goes, but definitely a great cast. Nobody was bad. Nobody was bad. They all played their part. But the biggest thing I need to harp on this is that you need to understand that this is not the Han Solo that we knew. This is a different Han Solo. And so I think if people are to get past that barrier, they will understand why this movie is better than they think it is, and understand why people like me love it so much and want to see more of that character down the line. All right, guys, let's take a break from Star Wars for here just a second and talk about PB&W. As I mentioned, peanut butter flavored whiskey has been the jam for the last, I don't know, year or two as far as whiskey goes, and it really is like the flavor to go to, and people are trying to capitalize on that market. But in my opinion, no no two brands have done it better than Screwball and PB&W. I really do enjoy Screwball, but to me, PB&W is better. There's a couple reasons why. It's smoother, first of all. It is a much smoother whiskey, in my opinion. It goes down a lot smoother. You can drink it however you want. It's funny. All the whiskeys I've done so far have said you can have it as a cocktail, you can have it on ice, or you can have it neat. This one strictly says you can have it neat, or you should do it neat or in a cocktail. I always personally choose ice. That's just the way I like to go. Um, but this is the first one that we've had so far on the show that says you should have it this way or this way, and not including all three of them. So here's the background information, a little bit of description here on the back of the bottle. A balancing act of smooth peanut butter flavor with premium whiskey. As the ultimate blend of two beloved American icons, PB&W is the new ringmaster of flavored whiskey. Enjoy it neat or blend it in delicious cocktail, which I just mentioned. We brought the whiskey, you bring the jam. And it's from the distillery, and the company is actually in Fort Collins, Colorado. Very, very cool. Colorado is known for a lot of very popular, not just alcoholic brands, but beer brands as well. Obviously, with Coors Light being the biggest. And I'll show the bottle here again. You guys can see right there on the left-hand side of the screen. But here's the bottle. Very cool layout for the bottle with the carnival theme and the peanut bag. Very attractive bottle. It kind of interests you. If you saw it on the shelf for the first time, you'd be like, "Oh, what is that? What is that?" And it's I mentioned it's my favorite of the two if I were to choose between this and Screwball. And I will get to that a little bit later. But I wanted to kind of tease that before we get into our next Star Wars topic. So again, PB&W peanut butter flavored whiskey, guys. I definitely recommend checking that out, and some of the reasons why I talk about later will probably sway you that way. So let's go ahead and get back into Star Wars here for a sec. So Solo, a Star Wars story. I talked about number 5 being the cast. My number 4 reason as to why I think Solo is so good is a combination. It's tone, setting, and genre. It's kind of that layer that you're setting up with the story, right? The way you write it, where you write it, what kind of feel you give the movie. I love heist movies that have quick paces, that kind of move quickly, that have very interesting and dynamic characters. And this is the movie that has that in Star Wars. We have seen stuff like this in Star Wars before. We've seen a lot more of it within comic books and novels, but excuse me, this is the one that we see the most. It's a heist film, and that's awesome. Like it's a heist movie that is focused in the Star Wars galaxy, and I can't explain enough how cool that is to think about. Right? We saw in the Clone Wars recently, for season 7, the middle arc with Ahsoka, where there was a heist aspect. It was very Solo-esque, which is very cool. But as far as Star Wars feature films go, this is the only one of its kind, right? All the films have mainly been centered around war, right? Obviously, with the saga films, it's always the rebellion versus the Empire, or the Resistance versus the First Order, or in the prequels, you have the Republic versus the Trade Federation and the Droid Army. Rogue One, obviously, it's the beginnings of the rebellion and what we know of it in the original trilogy up against the Empire. So all very same feelings. This is completely out the realm of those movies. Excuse me. This is completely different from anything we know in Star Wars at this point. And they give it this fun, different flavor, and that's why I love it so much. I had mentioned earlier how my favorite whiskey of all time, which I'm not going to mention because it'll obviously come later on, doesn't really fit with this movie. I chose PB&W today because it's different flavors. It's a vibrant, a very interesting flavor that kind of hits your palate. And the reason why is because Solo is exactly that. It's fun, it's interesting, it's unique, it's different, it's vibrant inside the Star Wars galaxy, inside the Star Wars franchise as far as movies go. When you walk in, you sit down, you watch this movie at home. For me, it was coming out of theater for the first time. The first thing that came to my head was, wow, I just had a lot of fun. I just had a blast watching this movie. It wasn't It wasn't, drama filled or heavy at times with characters dying. Obviously, we had those moments, right? But ultimately, it was a fun adventure with these new characters and some that we've known before, getting to know them on a different vibe of Star Wars. And that's what I love about it so much, right? You get this incredibly unique and different character in L3 as far as a droid goes, right? She has a personality. She feels like a human. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge does a brilliant job of teaching her. We've never seen a character like Beckett, Tobias Beckett, in the universe before. Okay, we get Dryden Voss, who's a very interesting villain, but we just don't get enough of him, which is one of the negative aspects of the movie. And so the tone, the setting, the genre is what I'm getting at here. The heist aspect of it is what one of the biggest reasons why I love it so much. It brings a different flavor and feeling to the film. It 100% does. Ron Howard as a director is able, and I'm not going to get into detail about the behind the scenes drama. I know that I can do a whole entire podcast on that with Phil Lord and Chris Miller and how Lucasfilm handled that and all that stuff. And I might get into that a little bit later, just for a little bit. But I think what Ron Howard was able to capture, stepping in and finishing the film, he captured the heist genre brilliantly. It was fun. It was different. You're on the edge of your seat. You're enjoying the speeder chase at the beginning of the film on Corellia. You're enjoying seeing the Kessel Run for the first time. That feels like it's a cinematic event, right? You're expecting it to be a race of some kind, but really they're racing against time, and they're out racing the people that are chasing them. And so that's why I love Solo so much. It's the fourth reason why I think it's the fourth best reason. But I wanted to mention it because it pairs so well with this type of whiskey. PB&W is a very before you even taste it, when you smell it, you know exactly what you're in for, right? It hits your nose, it hits your palate, and you know exactly what you're getting. It's a big, bold flavor, and this movie is bold. It's fun. It's adventurous. It has all those feelings of this heist film that we're looking for, that it goes after, and it does it brilliantly. I'm not going to say that it's one of my favorite movies of all time in Star Wars. Like, it's right in the middle of the pack, maybe up there a little bit more. But I just think that it captures it so well. And it's something that I had to mention as far as five best goes, because it's a lot of things that people forget about when they talk about this movie, right? It's just different in Star Wars. And that's exactly what these spin off movies were going for. Rogue One was very heavy. It was a heavy downer of a movie because we knew what the ending was going to be. No matter what, if they succeeded, it was always going to end in failure, because all of these characters were going to die. Solo, that's not going to happen. Of course, there's those deaths along the way. There's those tragedies. But they get to a point where it's a fun adventure. Like, right when they meet Lando, all the way up until the twist at the end, I can't tell you how much fun I have watching that movie. Like I said, I watched it earlier, and it's just a blast to watch. You can watch it, you can smile, you can laugh, you can have fun. It has comedy beats. It has different characters that are bringing different things to the movie. And so I think that it's something that people need to remember while watching it, because Solo and A New Hope are completely different. Solo and Attack of the Clones are completely different. Solo and Rogue One are complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And it's something that when you watch this movie, and again, not everybody's going to like that about the movie. Like, that's fine if you don't like it, but you have to give credit where it's due. This movie goes after something different, and they 100% succeed at doing that. All right, so PB&W. Now, as far as flavor profile goes, obviously the peanut butter flavor here is very strong. That's exactly what it goes for, and does it brilliantly. But there's also a mixture of other flavors that kind of hit you all at once. Now, I will say this, it is a much more of a syrupy whiskey. You do not taste the whiskey as much as you would something else that I've had in the past, like a monkey shoulder or anything of that nature. You taste the bourbon or just the pure whiskey in those. This one, the syrup, it doesn't take over, but it's a blend that gives you that peanut butter palate, right? It gives you that peanut butter flavor. Now, I've talking to a few people who have tried it with me. I've heard them mention how it tastes a little bit more hazelnut than it does peanut butter, and I can kind of feel that, but the reason why is because it has a little bit of a caramel and vanilla taste to it as well. It's all of those mixed together. And if you think about that, it's a very interesting combination. It has a very different and unique flavor profile that a lot of other brands of its kind or flavors of its kind don't have. Screwball tastes like peanut butter. It does, but it's peanut butter whiskey. Like it really does taste like peanut butter whiskey. This truly does taste like a peanut butter caramel vanilla mix with a little bit of a hint of whiskey. Like that's what it tastes like. It already tastes like it's a cocktail in a bottle, which is always a good thing for some people. And that's kind of why I like it too, because it's so different, which is why I'm talking about Solo. It's so different from the others that I have on my shelf there. A lot of those are bourbon, and so you get that bourbon profile when you taste them. This is different than the rest of them, and that's why I like having it every once in a while, because it's just something completely unique from what I taste on a regular basis. All right, so I've gone through number 5, which is cast. I got a number 4, which is tone, setting, and genre. On to number 3, which is one of my favorites to talk about. It really is. It's not my number 1, but it is one of my favorites to talk about, and that is the world building. Now, we talked about it a lot of times with these spin-off movies, is that although we love them, they need to get outside the realm of the Skywalker saga because they're starting to make things smaller, right? And there's an aspect of that for Solo. There is. I'm not going to ever deny that. There is an aspect of that with Solo that they kind of make the galaxy a little bit smaller. But at the same time, they truly do expand it to an exponential level that could create sequels or spin-offs down the road about certain characters that show up. Yes, the Empire does pop up, but the biggest aspect here in this movie is Crimson Dawn. Okay, we know Crimson Dawn is led by one Darth Maul, which is something that I will talk about very, very soon. But who are these guys, right? What do they do? How do they operate? Where do they operate? We got a little bit of that in the Clone Wars, the final season. In I want to say that's like episode 9 or 10. We saw Maul. He was meeting with his Crimson Dawn leaders, and one of those was Dryden Voss, a very, very cool cameo. But Dryden Voss is one of 3 sub-leaders, if you will, for Crimson Dawn for Maul. He works for Maul, right? He's the leader of this specific side of Crimson Dawn. But that's all we really got from them. Like, what do they do? We know they're a criminal outfit. That's what that we know that of them. But what do they do? Where are they? How do they operate? Who do they operate with? Right? I want to know more about that, and that's one of the biggest things why I want to see something in the future is Crimson Dawn. That is world building. That is setting something up in the galaxy in that time era that we don't know about in Star Wars at this time. We had never heard about Crimson Dawn before Solo, but now we know that there is something out there that isn't the Pikes or isn't the Hutts as far as a criminal organization, right? This was happening as the Empire was kind of coming to power. They were already there, but they were really in the beginnings of it. Just a few years out from like the official beginning of the Empire. What is Crimson Dawn doing at this time, right? Like how powerful are they? Are they the head criminal syndicate in the galaxy at this point? We don't know, but that is world building. The second biggest reason why that I can explain is Enfys Nest and her marauders. That's a hard word for me to say. Marauders. There we go. Enfys Nest is by far the most interesting character to come out of Solo. She is not only a very surprise, the fact that she's a younger girl who took over the mantle of Enfys Nest after the death of her mother, but she's not a criminal, right? She's not a criminal. She is an outfit of the rebellion, if you will, the beginnings of the rebellion, which is something that we saw in Rebels, Star Wars Rebels. We saw the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance coming together in Star Wars Rebels, right? They had these different cells that were out there operating on their own, and then they ultimately came together as one alliance. Enfys Nest and her crew is exactly that. She had said it at the end of the film. Each person in her crew is from a world that the Empire has taken over and destroyed. That is where they are from, right? We saw humans, we saw aliens, we saw men, we saw women, we saw all these different types of characters that were in this band of rebels, if you will, that had come together and they were fighting for one cause. And we didn't know that until the end of the movie. For the entire film, we were led to believe that they were another version of a criminal outfit, or an outlaw outfit, if you will, going up against Beckett and his crew, fighting for coaxium and other scores, trophies. But at the end of the film, it's revealed she takes her mask off, right? They have a conversation that she is part of the beginning of the Rebel Alliance, which is really, really cool. And of course, yes, this ties us back to something we know in the original saga, but they're not part of the Rebel Alliance. They may be that's the wrong way to say it. They're part of the Rebel Alliance, but they're not operating within the Rebel Alliance, right? The perfect way to look at it is if you watch Clone Wars this last season, the Bad Batch are clones, right? They're clones. They were cloned from Jango Fett, but they don't operate within the clone army. They kind of go do their own thing a little bit, right? They're brought in when they're needed. They're needed necessary from the Republic. The Marauders with Enfys Nest, they do things on their own terms, but it's still benefiting the rebellion because they're still fighting back. She had mentioned it, right? They may not be on the same terms as the Rebel Alliance, but they all have the same enemy. So why not work together for the same cause? And that is world building, right? If we go a year into the future, maybe one of them is working for the rebels, maybe they're all working for the rebels. I don't know. But seeing stories for them, where they came from, how they came together, who they fight, where they operate, that is world building. Now, Enfys Nest, again, as I mentioned, one of the most, if not the most interesting character to come out of this movie. I would love to see her in the future, whether that is a story directly on her, a comic book, a novel. I just want to know more about her, specifically where she came from. I want kind of like an origin a little bit because she's such a cool character. But that adds to the world building aspect of this film, and they do a great job of doing so. I think that it's one of the brightest spots of the movie. It's a very interesting and different spot of part of the movie, and I think the actress plays her brilliantly. It's under the mask a lot of times, but when she does take the mask off, it's a little bit of a shock. Like you kind of sit back like, whoa, okay. But then she kind of captures the essence of Enfys Nest from what we know without the mask. Oh man, that is very very smooth. Um, a great choice for today. One thing I didn't mention when going over the flavor for this is that it is sweeter. You guys probably could have got that by mentioning the caramel and the vanilla, the peanut butter aspect of it, but it is one of the sweeter flavors of whiskey that I've had, and that is in no way a knock. I think that it's a brilliantly made whiskey. Um, Sometimes a lot of whiskey can be strong for some people, but if this is a whiskey that you want to sip on, or if you're into it, you can take a shot of. It really is. I don't necessarily like the idea of mixing it in a cocktail because I think that it pretty much is a cocktail on its own. Um, but taking a shot of it or whatever, if that's your jam, if you will, because that's what it says on the bottle. If that is your jam, that is exactly what this is made for. It has a great profile, something that I will rave about till the end of time. And so PB&W peanut butter flavor whiskey, go ahead and check it out, guys. It's one of the more popular brands, and I can no doubt tell you that you'd be able to find it anywhere. Um, Okay, so I had mentioned up top that we're going to go through my 5 through 3 for the best, and then we're going to get to my one worst, and that is that time. So I'm going to get to my one worst, and I mentioned earlier how the handling of this film and the behind the scenes drama isn't something I'm going to touch on too much, but I am going to touch on it here quickly because that is my one worst. The handling of this movie was rough. It was a really rough aspect of it, and as far as people who know the ins and outs and follow it, um, it ultimately was the downfall of the movie. It really was, and I'm not afraid to say that because the movie, it had like I want to say like a high 60s, low 70s on Rotten Tomatoes. I want to say that's like a 71 or something like that, um, which is not terrible. That is not terrible. Let's not forget that that Infinity War, um, I believe, is in that range as well. Possibly even Endgame. Right? They're not perfect movies. Right? Not every single critic loves them. A lot of movies are in that range that are beloved. Like look at something like Man of Steel, right? It sits in the mid 50s. It's considered rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's one of the most popular DC movies ever made. And so when you look at it critically, it is not a panned movie. It's not a failed movie. It is not. A lot of the failure for this movie comes strictly from Lucasfilm and the marketing. The marketing in this movie was very, very bad. Okay. The first part of this is that they decided to release it in May. Now, I understand the reason why, because Star Wars for 6 movies prior being the original and prequel trilogy, lived in May. That's when they were released. That was Star Wars home. Okay. But when we go back to the 77, 80, and 83, to those 9 years, there was no such thing as a summer movie blockbuster season, right? Movies back then stayed in theaters for months, maybe even years. That's just how it worked. That's exactly what happened. A New Hope was in theaters for a year. The Empire Strikes Back was in theaters for 10 months. Return of the Jedi was in theaters for 9 months. I mean, that's just how it was. There was no such thing as a movie season. They could have been released in May. They could have left theaters at Christmas. That's just exactly how it worked. For the prequels, it changed just a little bit. There were more movies at a more rapid pace, but it was nowhere near what it is today. It is nowhere near what it is today. May is the month for movies. That is, like, here's a perfect example. Every single Avengers movie came out in the beginning of May. Yes, late April for the last two because they changed it the last second, but they all had the first week of May release dates. All of the X-Men movies that followed the original X-Men trilogy came out in late May. John Wick 3, May. Godzilla King of the Monsters, May. Mad Max Fury Road, May. These are all May movies. Solo had no chance. It had no chance sitting in May, specifically that Labor Day or that Memorial Day weekend, even if there was nothing around it. Because 2 weeks prior, there's some major blockbuster movie that had a $300 million budget. That's the fact. And the more baffling aspect of this release date factor is that the two previous movies, The Force Awakens, the three previous movies, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi, were all released in December and absolutely crushed it. They all absolutely crushed as far as money goes. Now, that is not fair to this movie to do that. It really is not fair. Okay? You release this movie in May, you expect it to make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars when it's surrounded by movies. And you know what? Just for the hell of it, let's go ahead and look up here for a second. So Solo came out in 2018. May 2018 movie calendar. Let's see what came out in May of 2018. Here we go. Deadpool 2. Solo, A Star Wars Story. If my computer goes a little bit quicker, let's see. So those are the two big ones to this point. That's May 4th. Nothing there. Overboard, the remake. A Breaking In, Life of the Party. Small movies to that point. Deadpool 2, May 18th. 2 weeks before Solo. That movie crushed. Made absolutely ridiculous amounts of money. Solo then came out. Deadpool is still in theaters, okay? It's not a ton in 2018. About 2 or 3 that really could have messed up. But let's go to June of 2018 and see what really happened. Because this is where it gets scary. The movies that come out after. Upgrade, a very, very popular movie, came out June 1st. June 8th, Ocean's 8, very, very popular. Hereditary, an incredibly popular horror film. Incredibles 2 was then June 15th. Tag was June 15th. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was June 22nd. And you're thinking that Solo is going to make a butt ton of money staying for a month in theaters by releasing it on May 25th? No chance. Absolutely no chance. It should have been a December movie. It would have made a butt ton of money staying in December. We would not be talking about it as far as a flop at the box office goes. And so I think that's by far the biggest mistake they could have done. The second biggest thing is just strictly the marketing. The marketing aspect of the movie. The first teaser was the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was the first teaser, and it was not a good teaser. It was not a good teaser. 6 months prior, you had The Last Jedi coming out, where everyone and their mom was in theaters watching this movie, right? Selling out across the country, selling out across the world, and you don't take the opportunity to drop a trailer? That makes no sense, right? That makes absolutely no sense. You drop a trailer 4 months before the movie comes out and expect people to get hyped up about it? I understand that The Last Jedi caused controversy, but maybe Solo would have came out of that with some hype. Who knows? Right? You could have started your marketing a little bit earlier. You could have gave it a little bit better marketing. But then you drop a 30-second TV spot that was really bad during the Super Bowl, and you expect people to get excited about it. That's by far the worst aspect of all this. And so I'm not going to get into the behind the scenes aspect of it as far as Phil Lord and Chris Miller and their departure and Kathleen Kennedy and how that was all handled. I may save that for a later podcast. But the one worst aspect of Solo: A Star Wars Story, yes, I do have negatives about the movie, but the one worst aspect in my mind is the marketing and the release date. I don't think it was just a very, very unfortunate aspect of this movie for them. All right, so let's get back to the best portion of the show. Excuse me. So the best portion of the show, number 2 here, I mentioned earlier, the reveal of Darth Maul. Now this is very cool. Being one who watches everything and reads everything in Star Wars, I knew for a fact that at this point in time he was alive. I knew that he was alive somewhere in the galaxy doing something. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't know about Crimson Dawn. We didn't know about him. So one of the best things this movie could have ever done is include him. His inclusion to the end of this film is brilliant. Okay, we knew throughout the entire movie that the Crimson Dawn was something big, right? Tobias Beckett had said, "You think that Dryden Voss is the bad guy? He's working for someone bigger." We had known that it was someone bigger. Now, whether or not that was revealed, we didn't know. But then the reveal of Darth Maul was bad ass. Okay, played by Ray Park, voiced by Sam Witwer, who voices him in all the animation. Ray Park obviously has played him live action wise since the Phantom Menace, excuse me. And just that quick short scene not only captured the attention of us who know that he's alive, but captured the attention of those who did not know he was alive. I was sitting next to someone who had not known he was alive. Okay, I was sitting next to someone who doesn't watch the animation shows, who doesn't read the comics, who doesn't read the novels. He just watches the movies. And his reaction was one of the best reactions that I could have hoped for. He turned over as he was watching. He says, "Is that Darth Maul?" I was like, "Yep, that is Darth Maul." And he could not believe that in some form he was alive. Now, the explanation of him being alive is hard to go by because people just see the movies and they're like, "Oh, the animated show brought him back. That's interesting." And so that's a little bit of a description to go by because some people may not believe it or want to believe it. But that is the case. He is alive. And the inclusion of him in the movie and making him the head of Crimson Dawn and making Kira the person who is working for him is one of the best parts this movie could have, one of the best story points this movie could have ever made. It is brilliant on brilliant. It is such a smart move on their point. And the unfortunate thing is because everything that happened with the marketing and the handling of the film and the way that the movie kind of got received, we don't ever know if we'll get that closure with him as far as Crimson Dawn, because that story really, from starting in Solo, that story is just the beginning. But it's the possibilities is so cool to see a Darth Maul and Kira show where she is working for him, kind of being his right-hand woman at that time. Especially knowing everything in Clone Wars at this point, what we know, it's such a cool part. You bring back a Sith Lord who is no longer a Sith Lord, but he still wields a double-sided lightsaber, right? He's older, he's more mature, he's on his own, he wants vengeance, he wants revenge, he's meaner, he's more aggressive. Like that, just imagine that on a sequel, whether it's a movie or television show. I mean, it's so cool, and it's one of the, even though it was such a short aspect of the movie, it is one of the best things it could have done. It took this movie from just being a heist movie to a whole new level. And some people may not like it because it may not have made sense to them, or they don't like that he's alive again. But for me, and I know that we always talk about this with Star Wars, but for me, knowing where he was at this time, knowing he's alive, it is so smart and it makes so much more sense to include him. Just imagine the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo, and Chewbacca going up a Crimson Dawn led by Darth Maul. How awesome would that be? So whether or not we see that in the future, I'm not sure, but I love that it's included in here. It kind of just adds, more depth and layers to the story and the overall meaning of it all. And so I give kudos to the writer or the writers, excuse me, for doing that, because that's a very bold move. It's a very bold move, and it really, really worked out in their favor for me, and I believe the majority of people. All right, guys. One last time, PB&W whiskey, peanut butter flavored whiskey here from Fort Collins, Colorado, coming for you. Again, very popular. You definitely can find it anywhere. I will show the bottle one more time at the end of the show, but I wanted to mention it one more time before we get on to my number one reason, my best reason why I believe Solo is a great film. And this shouldn't be a surprise. It really should not be a surprise here. That is Han and Chewie's relationship, beginnings, and chemistry of the movie. Alden Ehrenreich and I think it's Jonas Sotomo, I believe is his name. I'm gonna look this up just to be sure. Star Wars. Let's see what comes up. Yep, Jonas Sotomo, who plays Chewbacca now after the late great Peter Mayhew. Their chemistry in this movie and their work together is nothing short of amazing. It really is. It's nothing short of amazing. The way that first of all, the story aspect of it all, the way the writing is handled is incredible. Now, we all know that Solo, a spin-off Solo movie, was always in the plans for George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, right? It was always kind of out there for them. But the way that it was captured and told, as far as Han Solo being part of the Empire, him being claimed to be a deserter, being thrown in the pit with Solo, or with Chewbacca, who was claimed to be a monster at that time, and that relationship, how it started, it was instant. It really was instant. Like, the chemistry and the relationship that was forged was instant. That cage scene is so great. The way they make Han speak Wookiee, which is just so fun and interesting, a great way to kind of tease that, because we know that Han is one of the very few people who understand him in the original trilogy and even the sequel trilogy. And then it continues throughout the movie, right? When they're on the ship going to the train heist scene, he asks him, "Oh, what's your name?" And he says Chewbacca, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna be able to say that one every time. I have to find a nickname." We all know it's Chewie, right? I will say that the shower scene is probably a little too much. I don't know if I agree with that much, but I do think that scene probably could have been dealt with in other ways. But from there on out, you can just tell that it's just instantaneous. Like it's a relationship that is meant to be. It is just a meant to be relationship, something that we know of from the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. We know what these characters mean to us, and having that be so successful is exactly what we need. It is this movie, if you would have gotten every other aspect of this movie right, but failed at that, this movie would have been a failure. It 1,000% would have been a failure. And so for them to be able to do it to that level, for it to be the best reason why I think Solo is a great film, I mean, kudos, thumbs up, everything. Like, just, I can't thank you guys enough. If you guys ever watch this, I really doubt you will, or listen to it, for attempting to solidify our feelings about Chewbacca and Han Solo, right? Not just them meeting for the first time, but the first time they step in the cockpit together, right? You have Han sitting in there first, Kira trying to do the co-pilot, Han not really knowing that Chewie is available to do that. He says, "Hey, I need to do this, this, this." And she's like, "Yeah, you do." And then Chewbacca steps right in and does it all. And she's like, "Chewbacca, you need to sit down." And it's just, the flying together is instantaneous. And and it happens during the Kessel Run, okay? Them flying together is something that we will always remember in Star Wars. But they just get each other. They just get each other, and it's all throughout the movie. The chemistry, the drama aspect, the funny with them too. The back and forth they have, which was something that was such a bright spot in the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. You can see the beginnings of it here. Now, obviously, they're both different characters 10, 15, 20 years later when we officially meet them, but you can see the path kind of being laid out in front of them, right? We see that Chewbacca really does have this sense of love for Han. He doesn't go or after saving the Wookiees on Kessel, he doesn't go with them. He goes with Han, right? They have this connection that is nothing like Star Wars. There truly is nothing else like Han and Chewie in Star Wars, right? And that's why that moment in the Force Awakens trailer when Han says Chewie, we're home, is so emotional, because we have this connection to them. And so for them to capture that so well, and for them to make sure that we believed in this beginning and this relationship connection, that's perfect. That's all you can ask for in this movie, right? When you think of a Han Solo movie, Chewbacca needs to be in it. And if you don't make that relationship in the forefront, you don't put that in the forefront, and if you don't think that it needs to be dealt with or kind of honed in more so than other things, the movie's going to be a failure. But they completely successfully did it, and it's my number one reason why I think Solo is a great film. It is the best reason why that I can argue that is Solo is a great film, because like I said, if you failed at everything else, but this was the one reason why, or the one successful reason, I'm happy. If this is the one failure, but everything else is successful, I'm not happy. And so Han and Chewie is the core of Solo. It is the reason why it works so much. It is the best reason I can argue at any point in time why Solo is a good movie. And so, yeah, those are my reasons. I'm going to run through these guys one last time for you guys before we get out of here. So my 5 best, and I'll go in order as I mentioned them. Number 5, the cast. 4, tone, setting, and genre. 3, the world building. And then I go to my 1 worst, which is Lucasfilm's handling of the film in the lead up and the aftermath, which I touched on with the marketing. Definitely the marketing more so than the behind the scenes drama. And I go back to my best, which is number 2, the reveal of Darth Maul, and number 1, the beginnings and chemistry of Han and Chewie, the two of the most important characters we will ever get in Star Wars. And yeah, so there it is, guys. My conversation, discussion, recap, and just straight celebration of Solo. Again, make Solo 2 happen. This isn't just a day that lives on once a year. This is something that lives on every day of every year from now on. Hashtag make Solo 2 happen all around social media. As I mentioned, they got around 20,000 plus tweets on Monday. And so kudos to the Resistance broadcast and Star Wars Newsnet for creating such a great positive movement for Star Wars. And again, guys, this is the Whiskey Jedi podcast. Today, I talked about PB&W peanut butter whiskey. Now, here is the bottle. Again, a sweet, flavorful whiskey that doesn't just have that peanut butter flavor, but has a little bit of caramel and vanilla as well. Gives it a very nice, sweet flavor for you. It's essentially a cocktail in a bottle. And if you guys have not tried it, or if you're a fan of Screwball and have never had this, I highly recommend trying it. Peanut butter is kind of the craze in the whiskey realm right now. And this is, to me, this is the best one I've had so far. So again, right there, you can see it if I'm pointing. Nope, pointing the wrong. There we go. PB&W whiskey right there next to me on the left-hand side of the screen. You guys can find it on their website or at most alcoholic shops or grocery stores. So again, guys, this is the Whiskey Jedi podcast. I am the Whiskey Jedi, Jake Berlin. You guys can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at Qui-Gon Jake. You guys can check out the show on YouTube. As I mentioned earlier, if you're watching it, this is where it lives. But you guys can also find it on audio. So I'm on Apple and Spotify, the 2 big ones. But also Anchor, Google, Breaker, Stitcher, a bunch of podcast platforms. I'm sure if you listen to a podcast anywhere, you will be able to find the show there. And I can't thank Anchor enough for distributing that for me. So this is the Whiskey Jedi podcast, guys. Number 4 lives every Wednesday on Whiskey Wednesdays. I thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.